The oldest cities on Earth hold a secret written in the stars. We are about to decode the celestial alignments that governed their very foundations. By the end of this journey, you will see history not as a collection of forgotten dates, but as a grand cosmic map. How did ancient builders embed the path of the sun into a city's main street? Why would a civilization mirror a constellation in its urban plan? This exploration reveals a universal language connecting stone and sky, offering a new perspective on human ingenuity and our timeless quest for order. What does it mean to live in a world designed by the heavens? The night sky was their first clock and their first map. With no artificial light to dim its brilliance, the cosmos presented a spectacle of profound order, a silent symphony of moving lights that our earliest ancestors learned to read like a book. This was the dawn of urban astronomy, a time when the simple need to track seasons for planting crops became the bedrock of civilization itself. The sun's journey across the sky marked the year, its rising and setting points shifting along the horizon with the seasons. The moon's phases offered a shorter, reliable rhythm. By observing these cycles, a community could know when to sow seeds, when to expect rains, and when to gather for sacred ceremonies. This celestial calendar was so vital that it began to dictate the very placement of their homes and temples. Archaeologists like Dr. Giulio Magli point to a compelling pattern across ancient sites. The layouts were not haphazard. A main street might be aligned to capture the sunrise on the longest day of the year, bathing a central temple in light. A ceremonial gateway could frame the rising of a specific star, signaling the start of a festival. These were intentional, calculated decisions. The alignment served a dual purpose, blending the deeply practical with the profoundly spiritual. It was a way of bringing the perceived order of the heavens down to earth, creating a sacred landscape that mirrored the cosmic one. This foundational relationship between earth and sky is a thread connecting the world's oldest cities, a testament to a time when human ambition was guided by the stars. The sun did not merely rise over these ancient cities. It was an architect. Picture the longest day of the year, the summer solstice. As dawn breaks, the first rays of light do not fall randomly. They travel down a precisely oriented main avenue, striking the heart of a temple or a ruler's palace in a blaze of golden light. This was the solar axis in action, a foundational principle that turned entire cities into monumental sundials. From the banks of the Nile to the highlands of Mexico, the sun's path dictated a sacred east-west line, an organizing spine around which all other structures were built. This was far more than a practical consideration for sunlight. It was a profound symbolic act. The East, the place of rebirth and renewal, was connected to the West, often associated with the journey into the afterlife. A city aligned on this axis literally embodied the cycle of life and death itself. Consider the immense city of Teotihuacan in Mexico. Its central artery, the Street of the Dead, is not aligned to true north. Instead, its orientation is a sophisticated compromise, pointing toward the setting of the Pleiades star cluster on a key ceremonial date, while its main structures also capture significant solar events. This was not a random guess. It was a deliberate act of mirroring the cosmos in stone, ensuring that the city's very layout resonated with the perceived order of the heavens. Every sunrise and sunset became a reaffirmation of that cosmic order, integrating the daily lives of its inhabitants with the rhythms of the divine. To walk such a street was to participate in a celestial dance, where sunlight was both a practical tool for marking time and a tangible spiritual force guiding the community. But the sun was not the only celestial power shaping these cities. The moon, with its silent and ever-changing journey, governed a different kind of time. Its rhythm was not the steady march of day and night, but a cycle of waxing and waning that pulsed with spiritual significance. While solar axes created the permanent skeleton of a city, lunar alignments often directed the placement of its most sacred heart, the ritual centers where communities gathered for ceremonies tied to this celestial dance. These were not just buildings, they were finely tuned instruments for observing the sky. At a place like Stonehenge, the great stones do more than frame the summer solstice sun. Specific alignments also capture the moon at its most extreme rising and setting points on the horizon, events known as the major and minor lunar standstills. These occur only every 18.6 years, marking moments of profound celestial power that would have been anticipated for generations. To witness the full moon hovering perfectly between the pillars of a sacred trilithon during such an event would have been a breathtaking confirmation of the cosmic order. This sophisticated understanding of lunar cycles extended across the world. The Maya master astronomers constructed observatories like El Caracol at Chichen Itza. Its unique circular tower with narrow windows precisely angled was not merely for looking at the stars. It was a tool for tracking the complex movements of Venus and the Moon, linking their predictable cycles directly to a ceremonial calendar that dictated the timing of rituals, offerings, and even the commencement of important construction projects. The city itself became a clockwork of celestial events, its spiritual heartbeat synchronized with the moon's phases. This created a dynamic, living relationship with the heavens, one that reflected a deep belief in cyclical renewal and the potent energy of the night. The moon's silent dance did not just illuminate the darkness, it left a permanent, calculated mark upon the earth, guiding the very placement of the stones where ancient people sought to understand their place in the universe. Beyond the cycles of the sun and moon, a third principle emerged, one that etched the very patterns of the stars into the ground. Entire cities were designed as earthly reflections of celestial constellations, turning urban plans into vast star maps. This was the ultimate expression of bringing cosmic order down to Earth. We see a compelling example in the Giza Plateau. The three great pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure are arranged in a precise, offset pattern. This configuration is not random. Researchers like Robert Bovell have suggested it mirrors the three stars of Orion's belt, with the Nile River corresponding to the Milky Way. This was not merely symbolic art, it was a functional cosmology, a belief that by creating a perfect cosmic engine on Earth, the pharaoh's soul could ascend directly to the eternal and unchanging realm of the gods. The pyramids were more than tombs, they were launch pads for the afterlife, their alignment ensuring a sacred connection that transcended death itself. This idea of a stellar blueprint spans the globe. On the other side of the world, the magnificent city of Angkor Wat in Cambodia embodies a similar principle, but drawn from Hindu cosmology. Its iconic central towers are not just architectural marvels, they represent the peaks of Mount Meru, the mythical axis of the universe. The surrounding moats and walls symbolize the cosmic oceans and mountain ranges that encircle the world in ancient texts. To walk from the outer walls toward the central sanctuary was to embark on a spiritual journey from the earthly realm to the divine center of all creation. The city itself was a miniature universe in stone. Why would cultures with no contact invest such immense effort in this practice? It was a profound declaration of humanity's deepest desire to live in a universe that was not chaotic, but beautifully and intentionally ordered. By mapping the heavens onto their cities, our ancestors created a sacred harmony, a permanent bond between the human world below and the glittering certainty of the stars above. These celestial blueprints were not born of random chance, but from the minds of a specialized class of observers. Priests, shamans, and the first astronomers possessed a knowledge so vital it shaped the very ground beneath their feet. Their authority was forged through a deep understanding of the sky, a skill that allowed them to predict seasons, interpret divine will, and ultimately, to lay out the sacred geometry of a city. They were the living bridge between the heavens and the earth. To perform this role, they developed surprisingly sophisticated tools from simple materials. A straight pole planted in the ground, known as a gnomon, became their most fundamental instrument. By meticulously tracking the length and direction of its shadow throughout the day and across the seasons, they could pinpoint the solstices and equinoxes with remarkable accuracy, establishing the solar axis that would become a city's backbone. In ancient Egypt, these specialists used an instrument called a merkit. This was a narrow, forked sight made from a palm leaf, used in pairs to establish true north by aligning them with a specific circumpolar star. With this simple yet effective tool, they could lay out the perfectly square bases of pyramids and orient entire temple complexes with a precision that still astounds modern surveyors. The legacy of their meticulous work is written in stone. We have direct evidence of their methods from surviving records. Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets, for instance, are filled with detailed observations of Venus, the Moon, and the planets. These were not merely scientific notes, they were functional data sets. The appearance of a planet in a certain constellation could directly influence the decision to lay the foundation stone for a new temple or to begin construction on a city's defensive walls. The sky was a divine text, and these individuals were its most fluent readers. Their ability to forecast celestial events gave them immense influence, allowing them to harmonize human activity with the perceived rhythm of the cosmos. When you walk the straight, cardinal streets of an ancient city, you are walking a line first plotted by an astronomer priest watching the slow dance of the stars, their specialized knowledge permanently etched into our shared human landscape. The straight lines of a city's foundation were only the beginning. To truly understand this celestial architecture, we must walk the streets of a place where the sky was written into every brick and ritual. The city of Babylon stood as a living testament to this cosmic vision. Its very name evokes grandeur and mystery, and its design was a direct reflection of the heavens above. At the heart of its urban plan was the grand processional way. This was not merely a road for parades, it was an earthly echo of a celestial path, deliberately oriented toward the rising of the constellation Draco, the dragon, in the northern sky. This alignment transformed a royal thoroughfare into a sacred channel, connecting the city's central power to a potent symbol of divine authority that wheeled overhead each night. The journey along this path led to the city's spiritual and physical center, the Etemenanki Ziggurat. This massive stepped pyramid, often identified with the legendary Tower of Babel, was far more than a building. It was conceived as a cosmic mountain, a man-made peak intended to bridge the human world with the realm of the gods. Its 7 tiers were a deliberate representation of the known celestial spheres, a staircase from earth to heaven. The construction of such a monument was not left to chance. Babylonian astronomers, who also served as priests, relied on a sophisticated text known as the Emuel.Apin. This series of cuneiform tablets was essentially a manual of the sky. It contained detailed lists of stars, their rising and setting times, and the movements of the planets. This data was not abstract science, it was practical engineering guidance. The tablets provided the celestial timetable needed to orient temples and lay the foundations of walls in harmony with the perceived will of the gods. Even the city's magnificent entrance, the Ishtar Gate, reinforced this cosmic identity. Glazed in a brilliant blue and adorned with alternating rows of bulls and dragons, these creatures were more than decorative. They were powerful celestial symbols, with the dragon specifically linked to the god Marduk, the patron deity of Babylon, whose own mythic story was intertwined with the stars. Every element of the city, from its grandest ziggurat to its most symbolic gate, was part of an intricate web. In Babylon, astronomy was religion and urban design was its liturgy. The city functioned as a vast instrument, its alignments ensuring that daily life and grand ceremony moved in lockstep with the silent, predictable clockwork of the cosmos. To live there was to inhabit a map of the heavens, a place where myth was made manifest in mud brick and glazed tile, creating a landscape that was at once profoundly functional and deeply, spiritually rich. The Egyptian sun god Amun-Ra did not simply rule the heavens. His journey was physically mapped onto the earth at Thebes. Along the east bank of the Nile, the vast temple complex of Karnak was connected to the smaller, more elegant Luxor temple by a nearly 2-mile-long avenue lined with sphinxes. This was not just a convenient road, it was a sacred axis deliberately aligned to the midwinter sunset. At this pivotal moment in the solar year, when the sun reached its lowest point and began its return, the fading light would have streamed directly down this corridor. This alignment was a profound theological statement in stone, directly linking the sun's cyclical rebirth to the divine authority of the pharaoh, who was considered the living son of Ra. The city itself became a mechanism for harnessing this celestial power. This cosmic connection was activated annually during the Opet festival, a grand event that turned theology into a public spectacle. The statue of Amun-Ra would be ceremonially carried from its shrine at Karnak, placed upon a divine bark, and borne by priests along the sphinx-lined avenue to Luxor Temple. This journey was a reenactment of the sun's own path, a ritual procession designed to merge the god's power with that of the ruling pharaoh. As the god traveled to unite with his symbolic consort at Luxor, the king's own divine essence was believed to be revitalized, ensuring the continued fertility of the land and the stability of the cosmos. The entire city of Thebes was the stage for this cosmic drama. Every temple pillar, every statue, and the very path they walked was part of a grand design to intertwine political power with celestial order. The Egyptian mastery of solar urbanism reveals a civilization that did not just observe the sky, but actively built its rhythms into the heart of daily life and royal ceremony. The stones of Thebes still whisper of a time when a king's power was measured by his alignment with the sun, and a city's streets were drawn not by human whim, but by the silent, inexorable motion of a god across the sky. Far from the grand solar axis of Egypt, another kind of celestial order was taking shape. In the Indus Valley, the great city of Mohenjo-Daro presents a different kind of mystery. Its streets were laid out in a near-perfect grid, aligned precisely with the cardinal directions. This was not the dramatic alignment of a temple to a solstice sun, but something more subtle and perhaps just as profound. The entire city itself was an instrument of order, and that order may have been a direct reflection of the cosmos. The sheer regularity of its plan, with main thoroughfares running north-south and east-west, points to a civilization that valued harmony and balance above all else. This was not haphazard urban planning. It was a deliberate act of imposing a universal principle onto the chaos of the human world. The builders of Mohenjo-Daro possessed a sophisticated understanding of geometry and measurement, skills that were essential for creating such a precise layout. To achieve this, they must have relied on careful astronomical observation, using the stars to find true north and then plotting their entire city from that fixed celestial point. The cosmos provided the foundational line from which all other lines were drawn. This creates a compelling question. Was this grid simply a practical solution for organizing a large population, or was it something more? Some researchers see in this rigid geometry the outline of a sacred mandala. In later Hindu and Buddhist traditions, a mandala is a geometric configuration of symbols, a spiritual map of the universe used for meditation and ritual. It represents a perfected, ordered cosmos with a central axis and concentric layers of meaning. While we cannot know the exact beliefs of the Indus Valley people, the conceptual parallel is striking. Mohenjo-Daro's citadel, raised high on a platform at its western edge, could be seen as this symbolic center, with a grid of streets and houses radiating out like the orderly layers of a cosmic diagram. This interpretation suggests that for its inhabitants, living in a clean, well-ordered city was itself a spiritual act. The city's famous drainage system, a marvel of ancient engineering with covered channels running beneath the streets, was not just about hygiene. It was about purity. By efficiently managing waste and water, they were maintaining a state of ritual cleanliness, preventing the chaos of decay and disease from infringing upon their carefully constructed microcosm. Order and hygiene were two sides of the same coin, both seen as essential reflections of a harmonious universe. Mohenjo-Daro challenges our very definition of celestial governance. Here, the stars may not have pointed to a single temple door, but they provided the ultimate blueprint for an entire way of life, where the simple, right-angled street became a sacred line in a vast, earthly mandala. The straight lines of Mohenjo-Daro's grid were one answer to cosmic order, but another civilization pursued a different kind of perfection. They sought to capture not just alignment, but the very mathematical proportions that they believed underpin the universe itself. This was the world of sacred geometry, where numbers and shapes held divine significance, and the layout of a city became an expression of universal harmony. The builders of these places worked with concepts like the golden ratio, a special proportion found in the spiral of a nautilus shell, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, and even in the proportions of the human body. They saw this repeating pattern as evidence of a fundamental blueprint used by nature, and by extension by the cosmos. To incorporate this ratio into a temple or a city plan was to weave the fabric of creation into human architecture, creating a space that felt inherently balanced, beautiful, and sacred. This was more than aesthetics, it was a spiritual technology. In ancient Greece, this philosophy reached its zenith. The Parthenon, crowning the Acropolis in Athens, is often cited as a masterpiece of this principle. While scholars debate the precise intentionality of every measurement, the overall design appears to resonate with the golden ratio. The relationship between the building's length and height, the spacing of its columns, and the dimensions of its facade all seem to reflect these ideal proportions. Why would this matter? To the Greek mind, beauty was not merely pleasing to the eye, it was a reflection of truth and cosmic order. A building designed with these ratios was not just a shelter for a statue of Athena, it was a physical manifestation of harmony, a microcosm of a perfectly ordered universe. This mathematical approach extended beyond single buildings to the very planning of sacred spaces. The Pythagoreans, a school of philosophers and mystics, believed that numbers were the language of reality. They discovered that simple whole number ratios produced harmonious musical intervals. They then applied this same logic to space, believing that a city laid out using these perfect geometric relationships would itself generate a kind of silent, celestial music. To walk through such a space was to be in tune with the cosmos. This was the ultimate goal of sacred geometry, to create an environment where every line, every angle, and every proportion worked in concert to elevate the human spirit. The city was no longer just a reflection of the stars above, but a living embodiment of the mathematical laws that governed both the heavens and the human soul. While the Greeks sought harmony in geometry, other civilizations chased a moment of perfect vertical alignment. For cultures living near the equator, the most dramatic solar event was not a solstice sunrise, but the zenith passage. This is the moment, occurring twice each year, when the sun stands directly overhead at noon, casting no shadows whatsoever. This fleeting instant held immense power, signaling a pivotal shift in the agricultural calendar and demanding a place in the very fabric of the city. In the Mayan city of Capon, we find this principle carved in stone. Here, architects designed structures not just to mark the sun's path, but to capture this singular moment of overhead supremacy. A specific architectural feature, perhaps a narrow doorway or a carefully positioned chamber, would be engineered so that at the exact moment of zenith, a beam of sunlight would pierce the interior darkness, illuminating a sacred spot or a carved symbol. The effect was both a precise astronomical clock and a profound spiritual spectacle. This was no simple alignment. Calculating the zenith passage required generations of meticulous observation. It demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of the solar year that went beyond simply tracking the horizon. These builders were mapping the sun's path across the entire dome of the sky, pinpointing its highest possible reach. The city itself became a complex instrument, its stones programmed to react to this celestial trigger. This attention to solar extremes reveals a deep, functional connection between the sky and survival. The zenith sun's arrival often coincided with the start of the vital rainy season, a time for preparing the fields. The architectural event thus synchronized the entire community, blending the practical need to plant with a ritual that reaffirmed their place in an orderly cosmos. To witness that shaft of light strike its target was to see time itself made visible, a promise of renewal written by the sun and read in stone. There is a celestial rhythm so vast it defies human comprehension. This is the precession of the equinoxes, a slow wobble in the Earth's rotation that completes a single cycle only once every 26,000 years. It is a cosmic clock whose hands move with glacial slowness, shifting the entire backdrop of the stars against which our sun rises. To even perceive this cycle requires observations faithfully recorded across countless generations. Yet, some researchers propose that this immense timescale was not just known, but intentionally encoded into the world's oldest monuments. The most famous and controversial theory points to the Great Sphinx of Giza. Its lion-shaped body, gazing eternally toward the eastern horizon, has led some to suggest it was built as a marker for a specific epoch. According to this idea, around 10,500 years before the Common Era, the constellation Leo would have risen directly behind the Sphinx at the spring equinox. This celestial alignment would have presented a breathtaking spectacle, the lion in the sky seeming to herald the lion on the ground. If true, it implies the Sphinx, or at least its site, was intended to commemorate an age that occurred millennia before the traditional dating of its construction. This is a deeply challenging concept for mainstream archaeology, and the evidence remains hotly debated. But whether one accepts the specific alignment or not, the idea itself is transformative. It forces us to ask a profound question about the ancient mind. What kind of civilization plans for a time 8,000 years in its own future? This perspective shatters our modern view of ancient cities as static relics of a forgotten past. Instead, they become dynamic participants in a cosmic story, their stones placed not just for the living but for generations unborn. They were building markers in a grand celestial clock, trusting that the slow, patient turning of the heavens would one day reveal their full meaning. These celestial patterns were not confined to grand avenues and towering pyramids. They were etched into the very surfaces of daily life, woven into the art that adorned every public space. Walk through the ruins of any ancient city, and you will find the heavens staring back at you from the walls. In Egypt, the symbol of the winged sun disk was not merely a decorative motif. Carved above temple doorways and on the thrones of pharaohs, it represented the sun god Ra, his outstretched wings and flanking cobras embodying protection, power, and the sun's daily journey across the sky. This was more than art, it was a constant, visible sermon on divine order, a reminder to every citizen that their ruler was the sun's representative on earth. The iconography was a language everyone could understand, translating complex celestial principles into powerful, recurring symbols. This practice was universal. In Rome, the interior dome of the Pantheon, with its central oculus open to the sky, created a direct connection to the heavens. But more than that, the coffered ceiling, with its patterned sunken panels, was sometimes inlaid with bronze stars, mimicking the very firmament that wheeled above the city. Stepping inside was to enter a man-made cosmos, where light from the sun or moon would travel across this starred ceiling, dramatizing the passage of time in a sacred space. Even the grand Ishtar Gate of Babylon, with its vibrant blue tiles, was populated by celestial menageries. The alternating bulls and dragons were not random choices. The dragon, or Mushasu, was a sacred creature of the god Marduk, intimately linked to the constellation we know as Draco. Every time a citizen passed through that gate, they walked beneath a symbol of the cosmic power that governed their world. This public art served a crucial educational purpose. In an age before widespread literacy, these symbols taught the population their place in a grand, orderly system. A farmer gazing at a sun disk on a temple wall understood his life was tied to the solar cycle. A merchant seeing a star pattern on a palace facade recognized the source of the king's authority. This visual language made the abstract tangible, transforming the overwhelming vastness of the cosmos into familiar, protective icons that decorated their city. Art became the most accessible astronomy textbook, its lessons reinforcing that the harmony of the heavens was mirrored in the stability of their society, a beautiful and deliberate fusion of the cosmic and the commonplace. So how do we move from seeing a line of stones to understanding it as a celestial marker? Unlocking these ancient codes requires a modern scientific toolkit, a field known as archaeoastronomy. This discipline stands at the crossroads of archaeology and astronomy, blending the study of material remains with the precise charting of the heavens. Researchers begin with meticulous on-site measurement. Using high-precision GPS and digital theodolites, they map the exact position and orientation of a temple doorway, a pyramid's corner, or a solitary standing stone. This data provides the terrestrial coordinates, the fixed points on the ground. The next step is to turn back the clock in the sky. Specialized software can reconstruct the precise appearance of the night sky from any location on Earth at any point in the past. This allows an archaeoastronomer to input the coordinates of a Mayan observatory, for example, and see exactly which stars were rising in the narrow window of its tower on the winter solstice in the year 800. This powerful combination of terrestrial mapping and celestial simulation is what transforms a suggestive alignment into a testable hypothesis. Pioneers like Anthony Aveni demonstrated the power of this interdisciplinary approach. By combining his astronomical expertise with a deep study of Mesoamerican codices and ethnography, he could see that a building's alignment was not just pointing at a star, but often toward the place on the horizon where that star would first appear after a period of invisibility. This specific event, known as a heliacal rising, was a powerful signal in agricultural and ritual calendars. the methodology is fundamentally about ruling out coincidence. If a solstice alignment is proposed for a structure, researchers will statistically analyze the orientations of all other contemporary buildings in the region. If that specific alignment is a rare and deliberate outlier, the case for intentional design grows strong. This scientific rigor demystifies the process, revealing the astonishing observational patience of ancient sky watchers. It shows us they were not just gazing at the stars in wonder, but engaged in a systematic, long-term project to weave the fabric of the cosmos directly into the world they built with their own hands. The lifeblood of an ancient city flowed not only through its streets, but through its waterways. Rivers and canals were the arteries of civilization, and their management was a sacred science intimately tied to the movements of the heavens. This was a world where the flow of water was synchronized with the flow of the cosmos, creating an integrated system of survival. In Egypt, the entire rhythm of the year was governed by a single, brilliant star. The heliacal rising of Sirius, when it first becomes visible just before dawn after a period of absence, coincided almost perfectly with the annual, life-giving inundation of the Nile River. This was not a mere coincidence to the Egyptians, it was a divine signal. The appearance of the star, which they called Opet, was a celestial herald announcing that the floodwaters were coming. This astronomical event directly informed their agricultural calendar, dictating when to prepare the fields and when to move to higher ground, decisions that shaped the very location and layout of their cities and temples along the river's banks. The celestial event provided the schedule, and the terrestrial event provided the sustenance in a perfect, predictable partnership. A similar philosophy guided urban planners in ancient China. Here, the concept of Chi, or vital energy, flowed through both the landscape and the heavens. Canals were not just dug for irrigation or transport, they were carefully aligned to channel this cosmic energy. A waterway might be oriented to mirror the path of a specific constellation, believed to draw down its benevolent influence into the city. This practice was part of the art of Feng Shui, which sought to harmonize human constructions with the natural and celestial environment. By aligning a canal with the stars, engineers were doing more than moving water. They were directing the very life force of the universe to ensure the health and prosperity of the community. This synergy between hydrology and astronomy reveals a world view where nothing existed in isolation. A celestial event was not an abstract spectacle. It was a direct command that dictated the management of Earth's most precious resource. The sky told the water when to rise, and the city, in turn, built its channels and granaries in obedient, grateful response. The stars slowly faded from the blueprints of our cities. This was not a sudden event, but a gradual shift in the human worldview, one where the practical demands of sprawling empires began to outweigh the sacred geometry of the cosmos. As vast networks of trade and administration connected diverse peoples, the singular celestial narrative that once guided a city's layout became harder to sustain. A new kind of order was emerging, one focused on earthly power and logistical control. The monolithic spiritual authority of the astronomer priest was fragmenting, replaced by a more complex tapestry of religious and political forces. This transition marked a profound change in our relationship with the heavens, moving from a deep, participatory dialogue to a more distant form of observation. The sky was becoming a spectacle to be studied, rather than a master plan to be obeyed. A key driver of this change was the rise of major monotheistic faiths. These religions often presented a single, transcendent God who ruled from beyond the visible cosmos. While the stars were still acknowledged as part of creation, they were no longer seen as divine powers in their own right. To build a city aligned with a constellation could be viewed as idolatry. a misplaced devotion to the creation rather than the creator. The focus of urban life shifted inward toward a central house of worship like a cathedral or a mosque, whose orientation was based on theological principles like the direction of prayer, not the path of the sun or the pattern of a star cluster. The celestial dance was no longer the primary architect, the divine will was, and it was interpreted through scripture and religious authority, not through the silent motions of the planets. We can see this pragmatic turn most clearly in the engineering marvel of the Roman Empire. The famous Roman grid plan, or centuriation, was a system of breathtaking efficiency, but its logic was overwhelmingly terrestrial. When Roman surveyors laid out a new city, they used an instrument called a groma to cite perfect right angles, creating the familiar Cardo and Decumanus, the main north-south and east-west streets. This grid was not designed to capture the solstice sun. Its purpose was military control, rapid troop movement, and the orderly division of conquered land for veterans. The city was a machine for administration and commerce, its value measured in its functionality, not its cosmic resonance. The Roman genius was for earthly order, and their urban plans reflected a confidence in human systems over celestial ones. This shift was also a story of fractured knowledge. The specialized understanding of the sky, once held by a privileged few, was not always successfully passed down through centuries of social upheaval, conquest, and migration. The meticulous star charts of Babylon were buried in clay for millennia. The precise methods of the Egyptian astronomer priests were gradually lost as their civilization transformed. As these ancient libraries of celestial data closed, the ability to execute such sophisticated alignments diminished. Later builders might still sense the power of an ancient site, but they often lacked the technical knowledge to replicate its original intent. They built upon the foundations of the old cosmic order, but their new cities followed a different set of rules, leaving the celestial blueprints of the past as magnificent, but increasingly incomprehensible ruins. This decline was not a failure but an evolution, a sign of humanity turning its formidable ingenuity toward new challenges, forever changing the skyline of history. The straight Roman roads and cosmic grids of antiquity did not vanish. They were simply reborn under a new heaven. Medieval builders inherited the ancient impulse to align their world with the divine, but their blueprint was now scripture. Instead of a pyramid pointing to Orion, a cathedral was oriented to capture the dawn light on the feast day of its patron saint. This was a Christianization of the solar axis, a sacred alignment that connected the rhythm of the church calendar directly to the stone and glass of the town. The entire community would witness this annual event, the sun's rays flooding the altar at a precise moment, a tangible sign of divine favor and celestial order now interpreted through the lives of the saints. This practice wove a familiar cosmic pattern into a new theological fabric, ensuring the sun's journey remained a fundamental part of the spiritual landscape. The very layout of a monastery could be a map of a celestial ideal. The Cluniac reform movement, for instance, encouraged monastic plans that reflected the description of the heavenly Jerusalem from the Book of Revelation. This was not a literal star map but an architectural mandala of perfection. The cloister, with its 4 walkways surrounding a central garden, represented a walled paradise, a protected microcosm of the divine order. The church itself was the eastern gate, the direction of the rising sun and the awaited second coming. To live and work within this plan was to inhabit a symbol, to walk daily through a diagram of salvation. Nowhere is this synthesis more breathtaking than at Chartres Cathedral. Its famous labyrinth set into the floor of the nave is more than a puzzle, it is a cosmic diagram. Walking its path was a substitute pilgrimage, a spiraling journey toward a sacred center that represented both Jerusalem and the divine presence. The journey inward mirrored the soul's path to God, a physical meditation on a spiritual cosmos. And high above, the stained glass windows continue the story. The magnificent rose windows are not just biblical illustrations, they are intricate wheels of color and light, representing the universe in its harmonious order. When sunlight streams through them, the cathedral interior is transformed into a kaleidoscope of celestial radiance, a vision of the heavenly city descending to earth. This medieval vision of the cosmos was no less profound than that of the ancients. It was a reinterpretation, a shifting of the celestial language into a new dialect of faith, proving that the human desire to build in concert with the heavens is a thread that weaves itself endlessly through the tapestry of time. While the sun and moon marked the rhythm of time, a single, steady point in the northern sky offered a different kind of truth. The pole star, known to us as Polaris, remained almost motionless as the entire celestial dome wheeled silently around it. This unwavering star became a powerful symbol of permanence in a changing world, and its influence reached down to shape the very centers of power on the ground. In ancient China, this cosmic principle was masterfully translated into urban design. The capital cities of dynasties like the Tang and Ming were laid out along a powerful central north-south axis. This was not just a main street, it was considered the terrestrial counterpart of the celestial pole itself. At the northern end of this axis sat the emperor's palace, the Forbidden City, positioned as the immutable pivot of the human world, mirroring the fixed pole star in the heavens above. The emperor, the son of heaven, thus derived his authority from this perfect cosmic alignment, his rule reflecting the eternal stability of the northern sky. This concept of a central pivot was a global phenomenon, often expressed through the idea of a world navel or omphalos. The most famous example is the stone in the Temple of Apollo at Delphi in Greece, believed to mark the very center of the world. While not always directly aligned with Polaris, these sacred centers shared the same symbolic function as the pole star, representing a fixed point of creation and order from which the world unfolded. In a world of uncertainty, the pole star provided a divine template. By building a city around a central axis pointed toward this fixed star, a civilization was doing more than just planning streets. It was making a profound statement, declaring that at the heart of their community was a core of unshakable order, a direct reflection of the stillness at the center of the turning cosmos. Ancient architecture held a secret language of light and shadow. These builders did not simply construct static monuments, they designed dynamic experiences that changed with the sun, transforming stone into a living calendar. A perfect example of this solar choreography exists at Fajada Butte in Choco Canyon. Here, 3 large stone slabs lean against a cliff face, positioned with such incredible precision that on the summer solstice, a sliver of sunlight, a sun dagger, pierces the center of a carved spiral petroglyph. As the seasons shift, the dagger of light moves, touching different parts of the spiral on the equinoxes and the winter solstice. This was not a random act of nature. It was a deliberate installation, a sophisticated solar marker that used the interplay of rock and light to announce the most important days of the year with unerring accuracy. The entire site functioned as a colossal clock, its gears made of sunlight and shadow, telling time on a scale that governed both ceremony and survival. This mastery of solar geometry extended across the world to the temples of Egypt. Deep within structures like the great temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak, certain inner sanctuaries were designed as light traps. For 364 days of the year, these chambers remained in near total darkness, the heart of the god shrouded in mystery. But on one specific day, often the king's coronation anniversary or a key festival, the rising sun would align perfectly with a series of doorways and corridors. A shaft of light would travel through this stone telescope, finally illuminating the cult statue of the god for a few breathtaking moments. The dramatic effect was overwhelming, a divine epiphany made visible. It was a theatrical demonstration of the pharaoh's unique connection to the cosmos, a moment where architecture bridged the gap between the human and the divine. These light phenomena were far more than artistic spectacle. They were functional tools of immense precision. To achieve them required generations of patient observation and a deep understanding of solar movement. The builders had to calculate not just the sun's position on the horizon, but its changing altitude throughout the year, accounting for how its light would penetrate specific openings at a precise angle. This was advanced astronomy written in stone and shadow. By manipulating natural light, these ancient cultures created an architecture that was alive, a changing interface with the cosmos that reaffirmed their place in a beautifully ordered universe with every passing day. The similarities between a pyramid on the Nile and one in a Mesoamerican jungle present one of history's great puzzles. Did these ideas travel across oceans, or did they arise independently from a shared human instinct? The evidence points to a world far more connected than we once believed, where celestial knowledge was a precious cargo carried along the same routes as spices and silks. Consider the Great Silk Road, a sprawling network of trade routes linking China to the Mediterranean. Caravans did not just transport material wealth, they carried the intellectual wealth of entire civilizations. An astronomer priest from Babylon might share a star chart with a colleague in Persia, who would then pass that knowledge to a traveler bound for India. In this way, a method for predicting an eclipse or a principle of solar alignment could slowly diffuse across thousands of miles, adapted and refined by each culture it touched. The Mediterranean itself was a liquid highway for ideas. Phoenician merchants, famed seafarers, required a sophisticated understanding of the stars for navigation. As they established trading posts from Carthage to Cadiz, they brought with them not only goods but also their celestial lore, which could then influence local building practices. Later, the expansive reach of the Roman Empire created a unified space where Greek astronomical texts, themselves inheritors of Babylonian knowledge, could circulate from Alexandria to Britain. Even the daring voyages of the Vikings served as conduits, potentially carrying northern European stellar traditions to new shores. This cultural diffusion was never a simple act of copying. Each civilization acted as a filter, interpreting these celestial concepts through its own unique spiritual and cultural lens. The core impulse to align a city with the cosmos was a universal human endeavor, but its expression was always local. A solar axis in Egypt celebrated the god Ra, while a similar alignment in the Americas might honor a sun deity with a different name and myth. The stunning parallels we see in urban planning across the globe are not necessarily proof of direct contact, but rather a testament to a deep, shared human longing. It seems that when faced with the vast, orderly heavens, cultures separated by continents and millennia arrived at a similar profound conclusion: to build their world as a reflection of the cosmic order they revered. Behind every celestial alignment was a silent language of numbers. Ancient master builders did not simply look to the sky. They calculated its movements with a mathematical precision that still commands respect. Their cities were not just art, they were applied geometry, with the cosmos providing the ultimate set of problems to solve. This numerical code was the invisible framework upon which the visible world was built, a hidden layer of order that gave their cosmic blueprints structural and symbolic integrity. The Maya, for example, saw time itself as a mathematical deity. Their long-count calendar was a complex interlocking of cycles, all governed by the sacred numbers 13 and 20. This was not arbitrary. Their vigesimal or base 20 number system stemmed from a count of all human fingers and toes, grounding cosmic time in the human form. This numerical philosophy directly shaped their architecture. The steps of a pyramid, the tiers of a temple, or the dimensions of a plaza would often reflect these sacred counts, embedding the very rhythm of their calendar into the stone. Walking through a Maya city was to walk through a physical manifestation of time, where every structure whispered the numbers that ordered their universe. Long before the theorem carried his name, the principle of the 3-4-5 right triangle was a practical tool for creating perfect squares and alignments. Rope stretchers in Egypt, known as harpadonapti, used knotted cords to measure the land. By stretching a rope with 12 equally spaced knots, they could form a triangle with sides of 3, 4, and 5 units. The angle between the 3 and 4 unit sides was a perfect right angle. This simple, brilliant technique allowed them to lay out the perfectly square foundations of pyramids and temples, ensuring their sacred orientations were true. This was not abstract math, it was the engineering that made cosmic vision possible. Different number systems evolved as specialized tools for capturing celestial rhythms. The Babylonians gave us the base 60 system, a legacy we still see in our 60-minute hours and 360-degree circle. This system was exceptionally good for astronomy because 60 is divisible by so many numbers, making complex fractional calculations of planetary movements far easier. Meanwhile, Egyptian architects relied on unit fractions, a system that excelled at dividing things like the cubit for precise architectural measurement. Their meticulous records of the Nile's flood levels, synchronized with the star Sirius, required and reinforced this mathematical sophistication. The sky was a clock with intricate moving parts, and these number systems were the only tools precise enough to read its face. This fusion of math and astronomy reveals a profound truth about these ancient minds. They saw no separation between the tangible world of measurement and the spiritual world of cosmic order. For them, the same mathematical harmony that produced a pleasing musical chord also governed the motion of planets and the proportions of a beautiful building. To calculate an alignment was to participate in a universal symphony, their cities serving as the enduring notation for a song written in the stars. The myths told around ancient fires were far more than simple entertainment. They were a sophisticated language for mapping the heavens, a way of turning pinpricks of light into a grand narrative of gods and monsters. The story of Orion, the great hunter pursued by the scorpion across the sky, is a perfect example. This was not just a fable, it was a celestial map. The bright stars of the constellation Orion served as a reliable seasonal marker, its appearance signaling specific times for planting or harvest. A city or a temple named in the hunter's honor was not merely borrowing a name, it was physically anchoring that powerful celestial story to a specific place on Earth, creating a permanent link between the community and the cosmic drama unfolding overhead. This narrative layer gave the cold, mathematical observations of the stars a soul and a purpose that everyone could understand. The entire pantheon of Greek gods had their counterparts in the night sky. Planet Venus was both the morning star, Phosphoros, and the evening star, Hesperus, each aspect tied to a different part of a larger mythological story. A temple dedicated to Aphrodite, the goddess born from the sea and intimately connected to Venus, might be oriented to capture the planet's light at its brightest. The myth provided the why, while the astronomy provided the how. This system transformed the cosmos from a bewildering array of lights into a familiar, populated landscape. The epic tales of heroes like Heracles and his 12 labors were not just adventures, they were allegorical journeys through the zodiac. Each labor corresponded to a different constellation, mapping the hero's path against the backdrop of the ecliptic, the sun's own annual journey. This made the complex motion of the sun through the stars something that could be recited and remembered by every citizen, from the master builder to the common farmer. Mythology was the ultimate user manual for the cosmos. It encoded vital astronomical knowledge within a framework of cultural memory, ensuring that the principles governing the city's alignment were not lost. The stories gave meaning to the alignments, turning a solstice sunrise from a simple event into the triumphant return of a solar deity, and a lunar eclipse from a frightening omen into a temporary victory for a cosmic serpent. When the community gathered to hear these stories, they were not just being entertained, they were learning the operating instructions for their universe, a universe whose order was literally built into the stones of their city. But the ancient conversation with the cosmos was not limited to sight alone. The stones of these sacred sites were also designed to sing. This emerging field of archaeoacoustics reveals that celestial alignment was often a multi-sensory experience, where architecture manipulated sound with the same intentional precision as it did light. The structures were not just observatories, they were resonant chambers, turning ritual spaces into immersive instruments that could amplify a chant, distort a whisper, or generate echoes that seemed to emanate from another world. At the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum in Malta, an underground labyrinth carved from solid rock over 5,000 years ago, a specific chamber possesses an extraordinary acoustic property. A deep male voice spoken in a certain tone can produce a powerful, reverberating echo that seems to fill the entire space, a phenomenon that would have been profoundly impressive in the flickering torchlight of a ceremonial gathering. This was not a random quirk of geology. The chamber was carved to achieve this effect, suggesting that sound itself was a vital component of the rituals performed there, potentially timed to coincide with celestial events marked by the site's alignments. This fusion of sound and cosmos is perhaps most famously demonstrated at the Mayan site of Chichen Itza. On the Great Stepped Pyramid of El Castillo, a simple handclap at the base of the structure is transformed. It returns not as a single echo, but as a piercing, chirping sound that eerily mimics the cry of the sacred Quetzal bird. The staircase acts as a diffractive grating, breaking the sound wave into a series of shorter echoes that create this symbolic auditory illusion. The effect is a deliberate acoustic marvel, linking the human-made mountain to the spirit of a creature that inhabited the heavens. The very act of producing this sound during a ceremony, perhaps as the sun cast its shadow serpent down the pyramid's side, would have blurred the line between the earthly and the divine. This holistic design philosophy considered the entire human sensorium. The goal was to create a complete cosmic experience where the visual drama of a solstice sunrise was accompanied by a resonant chant that vibrated through the body, and the scent of burning incense filled the air. In such a space, the participant did not just observe the celestial order, they felt it, they heard it, they became a part of it. The city was not merely a map of the heavens, but a symphony hall for the music of the spheres, where every ritual was an orchestrated performance harmonizing humanity with the universe. The celestial blueprint did not vanish with the last stone of the ancient world, it simply evolved. Our modern cities may seem like a rebellion against the sky, a chaotic sprawl of steel and glass, but if you know where to look, the old patterns still whisper. The grand plan for Washington, D.C., for instance, is far more than a political map. Its central axis, the National Mall, stretches from the Capitol building to the Lincoln Memorial, a powerful line intentionally oriented to capture the setting sun on the summer solstice. This alignment was a deliberate choice by its designer, Pierre L'Enfant, to imbue the young nation's capital with a sense of enduring order and symbolic power, a direct inheritance from the solar axis of antiquity. It is a modern processional way, not for a pharaoh, but for the ideals of a republic, proving that the urge to align our most important spaces with the cosmos remains deeply embedded in our architectural psyche. On a global scale, we even created our own universal celestial line, the prime meridian at Greenwich. This imaginary north-south line is the 0 point of longitude, the anchor for the world's time zones. While not pointing to a star, it functions exactly like the ancient world's central axis, a fixed terrestrial point from which all global navigation and timekeeping is measured. It is our modern pole star, a human-made constant that brings order to the entire planet, demonstrating that the fundamental need for a cosmic reference point is as strong today as it was thousands of years ago. Perhaps the most practical revival of this ancient dialogue is found in the growing field of solar-oriented design. Today's architects, motivated by energy efficiency rather than divine mandate, are once again carefully calculating the sun's path. They position buildings to maximize passive solar heating in the winter and employ strategic shading to minimize cooling costs in the summer. Entire sustainable communities are now planned with streets and homes angled to capture the optimal amount of sunlight, a practice that directly echoes the wisdom of the Indus Valley or Thebes. The spiritual dimension may have faded, but the profound, practical benefits of living in harmony with the sun's rhythm have been rediscovered with renewed urgency. This quiet continuity reveals that our relationship with the sky is not broken but transformed. The language has changed from myth to megawatts, yet the core principle endures, a testament to the timeless intelligence of building in concert with the heavens. The allure of celestial mysteries often invites grand theories that stretch beyond the evidence. It is tempting to believe in a lost global civilization that connected all the pyramids of the world through a secret network of energy lines. Yet the documented reality, while less sensational, is far more impressive. These ancient cultures achieved their wonders not through a shared secret society, but through independent, localized genius, each solving the puzzle of the cosmos with the tools and beliefs unique to their time and place. Take the famous Nazca lines in Peru. These vast geoglyphs etched into the desert floor are breathtaking testaments to human effort. While some popular theories suggest they form a giant star map, the archaeological consensus points to a more terrestrial, though no less profound, purpose. Many of the lines lead to sources of water, and the animal figures likely held ritual significance related to fertility and the landscape. Their primary alignments appear to be with the sun and the local horizon, marking seasonal shifts vital for survival in a harsh environment. To insist they are a precise constellation chart is to overlook their true function as a sacred, integrated part of the Nazca worldview. This critical perspective does not diminish their achievement. It grounds it in a reality we can actually understand and appreciate. The real magic lies not in fictional global grids, but in the demonstrable fact that cultures from Mexico to Mesopotamia, with no contact, each looked up at the same sky and independently devised brilliant ways to mirror its order on Earth. Their shared impulse reveals something fundamental about humanity itself, a universal drive to find meaning in the stars and to build a world that reflects that meaning. By clearing away the modern fantasies, we allow the authentic, hard-won brilliance of the ancient sky watchers to shine with its own undimmed light. Our tools for reading these ancient star maps are undergoing a revolution of their own. Light detection and ranging, or LiDAR, is like giving archaeologists X-ray vision. Mounted on aircraft, it fires millions of laser pulses at the ground, penetrating dense jungle canopies to reveal the ghostly footprints of ancient cities below. Where we once saw only empty landscapes, we now see the faint outlines of plazas, roads, and ceremonial platforms, all waiting to have their celestial connections measured. This technology is revealing a world far more complex and interconnected than we ever knew, suggesting that vast regions were carefully planned with the sky in mind. With these new maps, we can feed the precise coordinates of a rediscovered structure into advanced simulation software. This allows us to rewind the sky not just for a single temple, but for an entire urban landscape, testing how networks of buildings work together as a unified astronomical instrument. A solitary pyramid might have seemed non-astronomical, but when viewed in the context of a newly discovered causeway or a distant marker hill, its purpose in a larger cosmic plan suddenly becomes clear. We are on the verge of discovering that celestial urbanism was not the exception, but the rule for many early civilizations. This is not just about finding new sites, it is about reinterpreting the ones we already have with a deeper, more holistic understanding. The ongoing quest to decode our past promises to reveal a human history more intimately woven with the cosmos than we ever imagined. Each new alignment uncovered is another recovered phrase in a universal language, a language written in stone and light, waiting for us to finally learn how to read it in its entirety. Our journey through these celestial cities uncovers a profound and universal human desire to build a world that reflects the heavens. From the solar axis of Thebes to the stellar blueprints of Angkor, we find a common thread, a shared impulse to impose the perceived order of the cosmos onto the chaos of human existence. This was far more than simple superstition. It was a sophisticated fusion of careful observation, spiritual belief, and artistic expression, a way of weaving science, religion, and art into a single, magnificent tapestry. Our ancestors did not see themselves as separate from the universe, but as active participants in a grand cosmic narrative. Their cities were their dialogue with the stars, a permanent record of their quest for meaning and harmony. Today, as we look up at the very same constellations that guided their hands, we can reclaim a sense of that wonder and connection. We are part of that same enduring story, gazing at the same infinite sky. If this decoding of our shared past resonated with you, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. For more journeys into the mysteries of history, be sure to subscribe.